track.
Because I can't stop, man.
I've raced it 1,000 times.
That's what I'm talking about.
Welcome to Dave's Take. Today we are talking about Gran Turismo, the film based off the popular video game and the true story. Based on the unbelievable, inspiring true story of a team of underdogs who risk it all to take on the most elite sport in the world. I never really played Gran Turismo. I think I've played it a couple times, but I knew it was this realistic race simulator, but it was so realistic to the point that if you got really good at it, apparently you could go and race real race cars. Yes, that is what this film is about. It's a true story about this kid who got really great at Gran Turismo, entered a contest, won the contest, and was able to race real-life race cars. And that is an absolutely insane story of this average guy who's able to achieve his lifelong dream by playing video games and doing something that very few people can do. You have a pretty good cast, and you have Neil Blomkamp directing this film, and he directed District 9, which is one of my favorite science fiction films of all time. And I know he hasn't come close to the greatness of District 9, but I was curious about this film. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about it. This film felt very off to me, in kind of a gross way, and as more time passes, the more I dislike this film. I'll get into my major issues in a little bit. I'll first talk about the things I enjoyed about the film. I feel like it has pockets of exciting moments, but it goes into some of my issues with it because these pockets of exciting moments feel like they're missing basic story structure that you're supposed to have in a movie. What I mean by that is when you have a sequence, there's supposed to be some build up to it. There's supposed to be a little bit of setup. It almost feels like the moments in Gran Turismo are just flashes of exciting moments, but nothing's built to those sequences or some of the character moments. You get this overall story, you understand where our characters are at, but it feels like throughout the film, it's just like we're at one race, it's one little thing that happens at this race, and then we go to the next race, and the thing that happens at each of these races are important to our character and the plot, but it almost feels like the movie's just rushing through these certain elements. And so much of this film feels rushed that there are certain elements to this story that are completely forgotten or completely useless, especially with Orlando Bloom's character. And there are other elements throughout the story as well, where it feels like this overall script just felt so generic and probably rushed. Because I'll get into the first thing I felt about this film feeling gross. It just feels like a giant commercial. It feels like a giant commercial for all the product placement that is in this film. But the script feels so forgettable because it hits all those generic racing story beats. You have our main character, he's an underdog, he has problems at home, he eventually gets into this racing world, he has a rival, things happen to him. It's like you know exactly how the film's gonna go, which I guess in a normal racing movie, that wouldn't really be a problem. But it goes into one of my other problems with this film. It's based off a true story, an incredible true story about something that's really extraordinary, that an average person could get into a field like this because he got really great at a video game he just really loved to play. But the script in this movie feels like that's not enough to get your audience hooked and make a movie out of it. So it feels like there are things throughout the film that you could look at and be like, I don't think that actually happened. And you do a little research and you realize, oh, some of this stuff actually didn't happen, which is normally fine in a film about a true story. You definitely want to exaggerate a few things. But this film feels like it's not even trying to hide the fact that some of the plot points are exaggerated a little bit. And then something happens about 2/3 of the way through the film. And this happened in real life. And for the most part, I'm fine with how they depicted it. My problem with it, though, and why it feels a little tasteless, is when it happens compared to when it actually happened in real life. When this event actually happened in real life, relative when it happens to our main character in the movie, I kind of have a problem with it because it almost feels like they moved this event to make it sort of a hero's moment where he's got to overcome this thing and then do the great thing that you know he's eventually going to do. When it happens in the movie, it's not even close to when it happened in real life. And if you follow the story, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And like I said, I don't have a problem with it being in the film. I think it's an important event that probably should be in this film because this is a true story. My problem with it, though, is it almost feels like the film creators, the script writers, everyone use that event to almost try and elevate the story of this movie. Which, like I said, is a true story, but when you move things around, it's really not. And that's why it can come off as a little gross and a little tasteless. Some people will say I'm exaggerating over this, and the people that were actually affected by this event, I don't know how they feel about it. They might feel fine about this. But you guys click on my channel for my opinion, and that's just how I feel. It just didn't feel right. From a movie standpoint, and don't know this is a true story, this is a perfectly fine, crowd-pleasing film. My theater was getting very excited for all the exciting moments. And there are exciting moments in this film. There are flashes of some creativity with the racing scenes where it looks like we're actually watching the game be played. But that does remind me that some of these racing sequences and how they're shot and edited is so bland and janky that it honestly gave me a headache a little bit. And there are parts, technically, that just didn't work, where they used the same shots, and the sound here sounds awful. The race cars and stuff, that sounds fine. But there are parts with dialogue and things like that that sound completely muffled, and I have no idea what they're saying. It gets really quiet and then really loud and then really quiet, and it seems like that wasn't patched up right. David Harbour's probably my favorite part about the film, but that's not surprising. But even he feels like he's phoning in sometimes. That's what the overall film feels like. A big commercial for this video game, for the product placement in here, because the script feels like there's nothing really to it. It feels super generic, and they really market the fact that this is based off a true story. And I guess it kind of is. But there are parts that, like I said, just don't feel right. If you're a big fan of the Gran Turismo games, I'm sure you'll really enjoy this film. And like I said, there are some crowd-pleasing moments, and there are some exciting moments in this film. But for me, something just felt a little bit off about this film. I'm going to give Gran Turismo 4 Davey Daves. This just feels like a big bummer because the story really is incredible, but it felt like the studio needed to beef it up to make it more exciting so people will go see it, so the movie would be more of a movie. Where sometimes stories are so cool to hear that you can just make a movie and actually be true to what actually happened, and people might really like that. But here, I don't think that's what happened. So, Gran Turismo, let me know what you guys thought of it once you've seen it. I'm curious to hear, and thank you so much for watching. Click here to see more of Dave's Takes.